Today's episode is sponsored by Branding Iron Advertising, Marketing, and Public Relations. Since 2007, Branding Iron has been helping to bring awareness to the mission of volunteer firefighters. You can learn more by visiting their website, brandingiron.com. Hello and welcome to episode 12 of Situational Awareness Matters radio show. I'm your host, Rich Gasaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence environments. The SAMatters mission is simple, to help you see the bad things coming and time to avoid bad outcomes. In this episode, I had the pleasure of interviewing Alan Predmore, the fire chief in Buckley, Washington. I have had the opportunity to deliver multiple programs for the Buckley Fire Department over the past 5 years, and this past February, Chief Predmore invited me out to talk to the students of his Recruit Academy class about situational awareness. During that discussion, it was noted that a recruit with strong situational awareness may see something that has been overlooked by an officer or an incident commander, and when this occurs, the recruit may not, for a variety of reasons, speak up. I shared with the class how this was a problem in aviation and how flight crew members were taught using crew resource management techniques to speak up when they have a concern. I suggested that fire departments might benefit from having a code word or a phrase that once uttered would alert the recipient of the message that there is a safety concern. Chief Predmore was in the room during the discussion with the recruits, and this message got his wheels turning and got him wondering what he could do to alleviate the concerns of recruit firefighters, or any firefighter for that matter, who might have a concern about speaking up. From that, the phrase, "the pigs are eating lemons," was created. Let's listen in as Chief Predmore tells us how this unusual phrase came about and how it's already been used once with exceptional results. Okay, I'm in Buckley, Washington, talking with Chief Alan Predmore, and we got together to talk about a innovative idea that they've implemented here in Buckley. And it all started last February when Chief Predmore invited me out to talk to his recruit class. They were putting a recruit class on of how many firefighters, Alan?
32.
32 firefighters in a recruit class, and I was talking with the recruits about situational awareness, and one of the things that we got onto the conversation on, and I don't remember if somebody had asked a question or what got us into this direction of, what do you do when a recruit sees something that maybe a more experienced firefighter or an officer doesn't see? How do they speak up, or how do they let a superior know that they have a concern or a worry about something without the fear of retribution or being criticized or being smacked down by an officer? And Chief Predmore was in the room as I was having the conversation with the recruits, and from that conversation with the recruits, Chief, you drew some inspiration?
Yeah, well, you were talking to them about the responsibility that they had, even as new recruits, if they saw something that they felt other people weren't perceiving and needed to be aware of, that they had a duty and a responsibility to tell somebody about it. And the challenge for a new recruit, and as far as that goes, most any firefighter going to an incident commander or a commanding officer to scene, is how do you approach them and how would you tell them that? And when I was listening to you talk to the recruits about that, I thought, well, it's not only that they have a responsibility to, but they have a right to be able to do that. And what means do we have in place for that to happen? And I started thinking about situations and the types of incidents that I've been the incident commander at before, or my other senior officers or incident commanders at, and started running through my mind what would happen if a brand new recruit came up with some important information and wanted to tell me about that, especially at that point in time where, the stress level was high and many of the barriers of situational awareness were in place, and even though I've had the training more than once and I'm well aware of it, it's a constant struggle, in a sense, to make sure that you're doing due diligence and recognizing that those barriers are there. And so one of the things that you had actually said to the recruits was, man, it's like we need a code word or something to tell somebody that, hey, pay attention. Mm-hmm. And so that got my mind thinking. And, what would happen in our organization? Would a brand new person, or for that matter, a person with 5 years or 10 years that had something that they really felt was important, would they feel comfortable going to every officer, every incident commander, and expressing that? And even more important to me was, would those officers or myself actually pay attention to it and listen?
Especially if it's a brand new firefighter, right? Oh. I mean, you've got shoes older than some of those firefighters, and they're coming to you and saying, "Well, Chief, I've got a concern about something," and you're in the midst of commanding the incident with all the stress and pressure. It'd be very easy to blow them off.
Oh, it reminds me of the old cartoons of the dog, and it's like blah 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 Ginger, blah blah blah, and that's all the dog hears is Ginger, its name. It doesn't hear anything else. It would be the same thing. It would be, okay, thank you, great, but the recognition of the information would never occur. Mm-hmm. So, you had said something about, wouldn't it be great if we had a code word? And so I got thinking, well, we have code words in the fire service. I mean, we have Mayday. And, calling a Mayday is still really relatively new in the fire service. I mean, we didn't have the word Mayday 32 years ago when I started the fire service. And now universally throughout the fire service, I mean, Mayday means something. It's something significant. While each agency might have its own particular procedures, generally I think you can go the fire service nationwide, and somebody saying Mayday is going to cause everybody to stop and begin to move in a certain direction. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, why shouldn't we be looking at doing the same thing? If somebody has information that they need to bring forward, why don't we have a code word for making that happen? And part of that, was taking into consideration those barriers to situational awareness that you've taught all of us. Mm-hmm. I mean, what would it really take to break the cycle, to actually cause somebody to listen to the information, to perceive it, to understand it, and then to forecast what it actually meant?
So you are of the mindset that you needed some kind of code that would actually shock the listener into listening.
Yeah, it would be something that they'd have no choice. I mean, you couldn't go up and say, hey, I've got something important to tell you, because that would just be blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. They'd probably, out of courtesy or professionalism, if nothing else, would say, okay, well, tell me. But the chances that they would really listen and perceive the information, they're humans. I know what's going to happen. I know what I would do myself. Mm-hmm. Certainly some people, if one of my assistant chiefs came to me, I would certainly listen. A mm-hmm. brand new firefighter come to me, I would pretend to listen, but I probably wouldn't really give it the due
attention
that I should.
Yeah, right.
So we started kind of kicking this around in the organization, and not just with command staff, but with firefighters, and it was trying to come up with some type of a catchy phrase. Mm-hmm. What would really work? And so we developed a few different phrases, and in a non-scientific test, we kind of threw those out to people and just looked to see what their response to them were. And they were all pretty crazy. But the one that seemed to really get people's attention was when we said, the pigs are eating lemons. Now think about it. You're the incident commander. You're at a fire. It's a high-stress situation. There's a lot of things going on. All of your senses are in gear. There's tons of information coming at you. And a brand new firefighter comes up to you and says, hey, Chief, I think the pigs are eating lemons. How does that not stop you?
Yeah. It certainly would cause you to say, what in the world does that mean?
Right.
Yeah, because it's just such a bizarre statement I guess it's designed to be bizarre. As I talked with your recruits about that, it was about finding a way to essentially grab the incident commander by the coat collar and put your nose and their nose together and say, something isn't right here, but do it in a way that you're not going to dismiss them because they're just a recruit. So you came up with the pigs are eating lemons. Now, how did your organization react to that phrase, or even the concept of using that phrase in an incident? Did they think that you had gotten into the sake, or that's not something that you would see. You can't look around and say, well, this fire department's doing it, and this fire department uses that phrase, and this fire department uses that phrase. You're on the cutting edge here. You're the only fire department that I know of. I know some of them have some phrases that they use, but nobody uses something as wild as the pigs are eating lemons. So you get your organization, and at some point you got to roll this out as an idea.
Yeah,
right?
And it's no disrespect to our law enforcement brothers and sisters either. I mean, it truly just came out of how do you break the cycle? I think one of my a good friend of mine who's a park ranger that deals a lot with incident management and incident command systems in wilderness search and rescue and wilderness rescue operations. He described it to me as like, that's a great idea. It's like a verbal AED. It stops that dysfunctional rhythm and resets it.
Yeah.
And, that's what it did. So...
Well, hold on. Let's stop there for a second. Because when you told me that, we were together earlier hiking up at Mount Rainier, and you said it was like the verbal AED, how it just stops the dysfunctional rhythm. Really, the rhythm that it is stopping is the dysfunctional mindset that everything is going okay, and the incident commander doesn't see that something is awry. So this is kind of like a shock. Using this term is kind of like a shock to the brain of the commander to say something isn't right here. Bam! You're shocking them with this phrase that is kind of like the wake up call. Like a smack in the face. Saying,
I was going to say, it's the respectful way of walking up and hitting the incident commander in the face and telling him to pay attention.
Yeah. Okay. So, it's a catchy phrase. And maybe it'll catch on for others. But let's talk about, so you come up with this phrase. How do you get the organization to buy into this idea that this is a term to be used? And how do you tell them, how to use it and when to use it? How do you get them dialed into this?
Yeah, well, it has the shock value, and yet it kind of has the lightheartedness that goes to it, too. I mean, people hear you say it, they would think that they would laugh at you, right? And so this was another thing taken into consideration, is that if we were working in automatic aid or mutual aid and we had other departments and other companies, responding with us, maybe it's not even a fire, maybe we're in some large-scale all-hazards type of an incident, how, again, would one of our personnel be able to come up to one of our own incident commanders or one of our own officers and professionally and respectfully get their attention? And saying the pigs are eating lemons is going to do that, and everybody else is going to look, and nobody's going to have any clue necessarily what that means. But the person who said it did, and the person who heard them say it does. And that's the intent of it. So we actually went online and found a picture of a pig eating a lemon. I didn't expect that when I threw pigs eating lemons into the search of images that I would actually come up with a pig eating a lemon. But it was right there.
Oh, gosh.
And so we made up a little business card thing that says, when something's going bad, the pigs are eating lemons. And we just gave that to everybody. And for, you were out and saw us in February. It was about the first part of April when we finally started rolling this out in training and had enough discussion about it in the organization to say that we wanted to do it. And not a lot of people were involved in the discussion piece of it. Some of them, unbeknownst to them, were kind of the guinea pigs to have these phrases tested on. But so we went through a number of our training sessions and and made sure that everybody got about a 15-minute presentation about why this was necessary and how important it was that we also protected the integrity of that saying, that it wasn't something that could just be thrown down on the floor at any time when it wasn't appropriate, because it had to have meaning. It had to be just as important as saying Mayday.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually had one of our members, not related to anything within our department, frustration that they were going through with some things that were happening in their occupation and with the leadership and management in their organization, who, without a lot of thought of the consequence, just posted on one of their social media sites, "I wish somebody would recognize that the pigs are eating lemons." And it caused a shitstorm within our organization, because everybody wanted to know what was going wrong, what was wrong, that this individual was recognizing that nobody else was. And
they thought it was going on in your organization?
They thought it was going on in our organization.
Oh, and he meant it was going on in his full-time employment somewhere else.
Yeah, he had just taken this phrase and posted it that way. So, we got that stopped right away.
Right.
But it also showed that everybody really took this seriously.
Right.
I mean, in a very short period of time, it actually meant something.
Yeah. Now, for the sake of the listeners, it's fair to get them dialed into the fact that your organization has a group of people that are very robustly involved in social media. You post something, it's not unusual for you to get 20, 30 likes, that your members are dialed in collectively to each other's social media presence. So when this person posts this, a fair number of your members are going to see that this message went out there, which is then going to fly the flags for him. What are we missing? What's wrong within the organization?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And that's what their perception was.
Yeah.
And they wanted to know right away.
Right.
Or at least wanted to know that they wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that somebody was paying attention to it.
Yeah.
And so we easily corrected that, hey, it doesn't pertain to our organization. And it was this individual's, place of employment, and so, but it also really reinforced how protected this phrase and word was.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not used lightheartedly.
Mm-hmm.
It's not used in non-emergency situations. It is used in training. There are other things that it could apply to besides just emergency scene operations.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of things happen within the confines of the walls of the firehouse, and if it's something that's important and somebody's not paying attention to it, it would be okay to use that phrase to make sure somebody was willing to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we went on. Obviously it's a phrase that you hope doesn't get used. I mean, it's kind of like Mayday. You'd like to think that our people are training enough and being perceptive enough and paying attention to their situational awareness and always understanding that situational awareness matters and paying attention to all those barriers, but, we wanted to have something in place.
Okay, let's take a brief break so I can share some information with you about how you can attend a live Situational Awareness Matters program or sign up for the online academy if you're unable to attend a live program. When we come back, Chief Predmore is going to share how they used the pigs are eating lemon in a training scenario and what the payoff was. If you're interested in attending a live event, you can check out the Situational Awareness Matters tour stop schedule at SAMatters.com. Click on the Program and Keynotes tab below the header, then click on the Events Schedule tab. If I'm in your area, I hope you'll consider attending a live event. If you're not able to attend a live event, consider signing up for the SAMatters Online Academy. The Academy contains videos and articles that cover the same content as the 3-day live tour event, delivered in 14 modules that you can go through at your own pace from your own computer. The Academy Plus version includes 4 books that are referenced throughout the Academy. The Plus version is a great bargain because the tuition simply covers the cost of the books, making the Academy free. Just click on the link below the header on the SAMatters homepage titled Online Academy.
Then we had 4 of our firefighters attend an air management class being conducted out of county. And they came back from this air management class with a story to tell me about the use of this code word during their training exercise at the air management class. And what they had to tell me was somewhat rewarding in the fact that they had used it, and I guess what was really rewarding was how excited they were about how effectively it worked. And what they were doing during their air management class is working together as a team of 4, rescuing a downed firefighter, and they came to a somewhat restricted passageway that also had many barriers and entanglements and challenges in which they had to move the downed firefighter through. And so 2 of them on one side of the passageway and 2 on the other, and it turned into kind of a big cluster. Everybody had an idea of how this was going to work, and everybody was trying their idea, but nothing was working. And this is the story that the firefighters are sharing with me, and this is going back and forth.
So basically what they got is independent action of 4 people trying to implement 4 different plans, uncoordinated, and not making any progress.
Yeah, and they're getting frustrated with each other, and tempers are starting to rise, and one of our firefighters says, "Hey, the pigs are eating lemons." And they all 4 just stopped, and everything went silent. And one of the interesting things is this firefighter said that throughout this large warehouse that they had many different individuals training in, when he yelled out that the pigs were eating lemons, the whole training site went silent. So it has that distracting attention getting value. For our 4 firefighters that were in this training scenario, they all stopped. They listened to what the firefighter had to say that had used the code word. They took that plan of action, they put it to work, and within moments they had the situation resolved that up to that point in time had been frustrating for all of them.
So the use of that term did a mental defibrillation or a mental AED, a mental reset of the whole team.
Right.
It was like a stop, start.
Because prior to that, the whole, listen to me, hey, I've got an idea, no, we need to do this. It's, it's what happens, right? It's all of those things going on. It would be, again, alike to that incident commander that has all of that information coming in and all of those senses just being totally overloaded and not having something that can actually break the cycle.
And all the while, they're burning air and time.
Right.
And they're not making any progress.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So
they came back all excited.
So
he's like, Chief, it worked.
But I had a chance to talk with that firefighter too, and not only did it work for them, but it kind of got the attention of some others that were working in their proximity and the instructors too, right?
Oh yeah, it caused everybody to stop. I mean, it's like, what did he say?
Yeah.
So. And again, that's its intended purpose. I mean, it's to break that cycle. It's something that when a person is so focused, so cued in on the task at hand or the operations at hand, that when somebody comes to them with some information that they feel is important, it causes them to have to stop and listen to it. It's a shock value. Everybody obviously knows what the word is now. And so while it still has a little bit of that shock value, what we've done is we've brought meaning to the phrase just as much as there is meaning to the phrase that says Mayday.
So now for you, if you're commanding an incident and you have your newest firefighter who may see something that you don't see, if for no other reason, they've just gone through firefighter 1 and 2, so chances are some of the things that are really fresh in their mind may be some things that you've, having been in the business for as long as you have forgotten about, or slipped out of your your awareness because it's all fresh to them. And here with their fresh training, they see something that is completely slipping by you. So the new firefighter comes up to you, the incident commander at an incident scene, and says to you, Chief, the pigs are eating lemons here. If that happened, and it hasn't happened yet, right? It hasn't happened yet?
Hasn't happened in a real situation.
Okay, so if it happens, what would you do then?
It's stop and listen. I mean, the person's only saying this because they have information that they feel is so important that somebody else needs to hear it. And, could it be a single word code? Probably so. We did this to have a little bit of fun with it, but it truly also brought some sincerity to it. It means something to the people in our organization. I mean, I have no doubt that anybody in our organization, regardless of what the situation is, if another one of our members uses the phrase, it's going to cause people to stop and listen.
Now, did you have to spend any additional time with your officers coaching them about, you developed the phrase based on the session that you had attended, so I think you personally are like all in on this. If somebody comes up to you and says the pigs are eating lemons, you're going to stop and say, all right, you got my complete attention. What's going on? What do you see? Why do you feel that something's not right? You think all your officers are of the same mindset? And if they are, did you have to do some coaching or training or something to kind of get them to buy into the fact that a new firefighter can do this reset? I would think that out there are some officers who are like, I'm not going to listen to some punk tell me anything.
No, and I'm sure that there are. No, I honestly feel very strongly that in our organization, I've talked with each of the officers one-on-one about it. We've talked about it as at the command staff level and within the whole entire officer corps about how important this is. I keep making the relationship between it and a Mayday, but it is just as important to us in our organization as the word Mayday is to us in our organization. And, we, that the officers in our organization have been to your class more than once. And so they get it.
They do. Oh, gosh, they get it. And that makes me feel so inspired because I know they get it. I mean, they're all in.
So they understand the importance of this.
Yeah.
I mean, and they like it. It's like, this is not something that they have ever encountered anywhere else in their training, that somebody has told them that you should have a way to be able to do this. But they get the whole brain science part of it. They get the fact that everybody has a different perspective on it. And, what would be worse? I can't, and this is one of the things that I guess really inspired me to move forward with this, is I couldn't imagine anything worse than being in a situation after the incident to have had somebody come to me and say, I saw that was going to happen, but I was afraid to come and tell you that. I mean, I can't think of anything worse than that happening.
I agree with you, Alan. It's as I get the chance to talk to a number of new firefighters. I spoke to your recruit class. I've spoken to other recruit classes, and when I get to talk to recruits with the command officers out of the room, one of the biggest fears that recruits have about speaking up is they're going to get in trouble, or they're going to get degraded, or they're going to get a smackdown for speaking up. And I try to reassure these recruits by saying, what, if you have an officer, be it a company officer or command officer, who really does have the mindset that the safety of the members are first and foremost paramount, that we all go home safely to the ones we love, they're going to want to know if they're missing something. They're going to want you to tell them. But the challenge is figuring out how to tell them in a way that they don't become angry or defensive. And that's kind of what this phrase does.
And what we talked about as part of our training, and like I said, it was relatively short. We spent about 15 minutes 2 different times with all of our companies going through this, was that the incident commanders, the people that are making the decisions, have the right to know what information you have that's important. And you, if you have information, have the right to have somebody listen to what it is that you have to tell them.
And an obligation to share it.
And that was, maybe it's a play on words and changing it from responsibility to right, but it's, we tend to always think of things in terms of our constitutional rights, and if we took our rights on the fire ground towards safety just as significantly as we do those other rights, we could probably have better outcomes in a lot of situations.
Do you think your new firefighters now feel empowered to speak up?
Well, I think that's exactly what it is. It's empowerment. I mean, they don't have any... in one respect, it's hard to say because it hasn't happened, but they have the training. The officers have the expectation that any one of these people could come to them at any time. Anybody within the organization. It could be another officer. We talk about it being kind of the new firefighter coming to the officer or to the senior members of the organization, but, face it, I mean, our organization is a tight organization, as tight as they come, but that doesn't always mean that everybody agrees with everything. So it could be just as much as having a 15-year line lieutenant going to another 15-year line lieutenant, and maybe these two don't always see eye to eye on things. But I know if one of them says, "Hey, the pigs are eating lemons," the other one's going to listen.
And even though you have a tight organization, there's always a respect for authority. I've been in your organization and spent a lot of time with your members, and while I would say that you are very friendly to your members and very cordial and very conversive with them and very interested in their lives, there is clearly a respect for you as the chief, as a person of authority, as the head of the organization. And sometimes that authority is enough to give someone a fear of speaking up. Now, obviously, the better your relationships are with people, and you've got great relationships with your members, the more likely they are to speak up, because they know that genuinely in your heart you want them to speak up. You want to know if something's going wrong. You want to know if a mistake is being made. But out there in the world, I've spoken to a lot of recruit firefighters or young firefighters that are not necessarily even new in the organization, but they're not of rank, that would say to me, "I would never dare speak up, because if I speak up, I'm going to get smacked down. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get yelled at. I'm going to get some consequence to come to me because of I shared an idea." And I think what they're most afraid of is that somehow they're going to anger their officer if they point something out. Where if you have something like this in place, like this phrase, "the pigs are eating lemons," and the conversation occurs between the officers and the firefighters well in advance of having an incident, where the officers know that if a firefighter says this, that they're not trying to be disrespectful to that officer's authority. They're trying to help that officer do the right thing to keep everybody safe.
I totally agree, and I guess maybe making that just a little bit more simple. As I have read things on your blog, as I've read attendees' comments and feedback to you from different presentations, and as I've heard you present, not just at my own department, but at conferences across the country, one of the things that I keep hearing fire service people say, and this is what caused us to have you come to our Recruit Academy class, is, why are we teaching firefighters about situational awareness 5 years after they became firefighters? Why aren't we teaching firefighters about situational awareness when it's most important, in the very beginning?
Right.
And so, I think what addresses what you were just talking about a little bit in terms of that respect issue is, in trying to affect this change within our organization, and I hope it spreads like weeds through the fire service, is by teaching the recruits about situational awareness during their Recruit Academy, and now giving them the empowerment and telling them that it is their expectation and right to tell somebody else important information. When they see something bad coming that somebody else has not yet had the opportunity to perceive, it's okay for them to do it. I think that fear will go away. And just as much as, because they're going to carry that on with it. And 10 years from now, when they start becoming the leaders in the fire service, this is going to be normal to them.
Wow, it's a great it's a great process that you've put in place. I love the phraseology. When you first contacted me and said, "Rich, we've got the phrase that we're going to use." In aviation, they just simply use the phrase, "I have a concern," and those 4 words sets things in motion that cause pilots and co-pilots and flight attendants and air traffic controllers, and sets a whole lot of wheels in motion when in aviation they say, "I have a concern." But I think that you picked up on the idea that this has to be something that brings more shock and awe to kind of shake the incident commander into this level of heightened vigilance that something's wrong. And I love the phraseology that you chose, "the pigs are eating lemons," because it really does do like the mental AED of shock to allow somebody to stop and say, almost like, "What did you just say?" "Well, I said the pigs are eating lemons." Yeah, I heard that. But why did you just say that? And I think it's just a genius way of snapping someone to the attention that something isn't right. After you hear that, imagine you're at a fire scene, all the stress and everything going on at the fire scene, and somebody just out of the blue throws that phrase at you. It truly would have the impact of Mayday.
How can you not stop and listen?
Yeah, right. How could you not stop and say, "What do you mean by that? What drove you to say that?" And especially the fact that your people are not taking this phrase cavalier. Just like cavalier would not say Mayday in a joking way. They're not using "the pigs are eating lemons" in a joking way. You've only had it actually activated one time in a training event with an amazing outcome and an amazing story that was shared as a result of it. So for the benefit of the fire service, I would say to take this lesson and say that, look in your organization and say, do we have recruits that might or it don't even have to be recruits, firefighters, that might possibly be afraid of speaking up for fear of being smacked down or consequence or retribution or ridicule, and give them a tool to apply to be able to get their concerns voiced, but make sure that the officers are on board and buy into this, so that when in your organization, if your phrase is "the pigs are eating lemons," that the firefighter is able to say it with confidence, and the officer is going to pause and not get angry or want to retaliate, and say to them, "Teach me what you see, what you hear, why you feel the way you do."
The part of our training is when somebody comes to you and says, "the pigs are eating lemons," the only acceptable response is, "Tell me what you see."
Nice. All right, so I'm in Buckley, Washington with Chief Alan Predmore. Chief, thank you for giving me the gift of some time to talk about this. Like you said, maybe it'll spread wildfire, but right now it's a concept that few organizations know about, but maybe the podcast will change that, and more organizations will learn to be able to provide some way for those with concerns to be able to speak up without the fear of consequence. So thanks for spending some time with me.
Thank you, Rich. Keep doing what you're doing. The fire service needs you.
Thank you to Buckley Fire Chief Alan Predmore for sharing the importance of knowing when the pigs are eating lemons. Well, that's it. Episode 12 is complete. Thank you for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I sincerely appreciate your support of the SAMatters mission. If you like the show, please go to iTunes and search for SAMatters Radio and subscribe to the podcast and leave your feedback and a 5-star review. This will help others find the show. You can also sign up for the free SAMatters monthly newsletter by visiting SAMatters.com and clicking the red box on the right side of the home page. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gasaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit SAMatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgasaway.com.